I'm Glenn McGinnis, and this is Outburst. On the program, should fiscal prudence take priority over Universal Pharmacare?
I think it's very important that we balance our fiscal responsibility.
It's a balance of convenience and cost.
If I'm dead, my money in my bank account isn't going to matter.
It should be a human right to have the health care that we need.
But first, while the federal government has been trying to come up with solutions to make home ownership or even renting a home more affordable to all Canadians, has this affordability issue made them a day late and a dollar short when it comes to enticing skilled workers to come to this country? But with high interest rates making home ownership more out of reach for Canadians than ever before, and rental rates increasing right across the board to double or even triple what it was 10 years ago, do you feel that would dissuade newcomers from coming here and giving it a go? Our question. Do you think the housing crisis would discourage skilled workers from coming to Canada?
I think it would. I mean, if people are looking at coming here, but they know that they're not going to be able to find a place to live for a reasonable amount of money, it would definitely prevent them from coming. I mean, if the outlook isn't good, and even if they can make some more money here, but it's going to cost more to live, what's the point?
Yes, very expensive. So even if you're skilled, you can't afford to live where you are, right?
I don't think so. Like, especially for skilled workers, they have relatively high wage compared to the locals, so to speak. So it doesn't stop them. In fact, I think it will actually attract them even more.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
so.
so.
If they're well-informed individuals, yeah, it's an issue.
Yes, I do, just because it's so expensive to buy here and they know when they have options, and Toronto is where a lot of the high-tech jobs are, the prices might make them choose somewhere else.
I know for myself, I just moved out. I'm pretty young and trying to start a career, and I just can't imagine wanting to move here. I'm in fact looking outside the city, so.
It's definitely a deterrent. Like, why would anybody really want to come there with this type of market and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do believe so.
I think absolutely. I think that's part of the issue, is that we're not building housing fast enough for the amount of people that we have coming into the country, and I'm very pro-immigration, but I also think that we need to definitely be building more housing for sure.
I definitely think so, yeah. Why? Well, first of all, with social media, I feel like news travels really fast, and you're seeing a lot of frustration with the housing crisis, and Canada in general, it's a big topic right now, so I definitely think so.
No, the housing crisis won't discourage skilled workers from coming to Canada. Why? Because we have a lot of opportunity, a lot of land to build extra housing here, and there will always be opportunities, I think, in Canada to build extra housing, and those services will always be sought across the country and around the world.
Yes, absolutely. It already is.
Why do you think that?
Because I have a friend who was looking to come and move to Canada and actually came and had an interview here in Ottawa. And when they were looking at the housing prices and the cost of living, they decided it wasn't a good idea and it was going to cost way too much to come here. So even though the job was looking awesome and it was a great opportunity, it was going to cost too much to come. So they decided not to.
Once you arrive, you won't find anywhere to live, and it'll cost you twice as much to eat. The question would be, in my mind, why would I come? So I think smart people across the planet will say this is not a good bet.
Absolutely it would. Yeah. I mean, if you can't live anywhere, where are you gonna work if you can't have a place to live? That's really a big problem we have right now, for sure.
I think the answer would be both yes and no, because I'm assuming when they're coming for a better life. So maybe a housing crisis would be relatively minor compared to the situation of living. Like, I'm thinking of refugees and people from some of the countries that are having these wars that are going on.
If they're skilled workers, as in doctors, lawyers, everything else, no. If there's, in the middle class like I am, perhaps, because in some of the cities like Victoria, Vancouver, Toronto, it's ridiculous. It may encourage them to come to smaller places like here, because I find that here you can find accommodation.
I'm not sure, because it would depend on how much research a person has done before they come, right? I don't think anybody lands here and then just starts, right? But I also think there is such a factor of how many people do want to come to Canada. Like, I'm so surprised at what people will give up in another country to come to Canada for, their different reasons. And so, yeah, the housing shortage, I think also there are people that may have people they can stay with for the first little while, so that might help out a bit. So I guess my answer is kind of mixed.
I would say it could be a deterrent for the best talent to come here. My voice is bad today. I think that, there's still going to be foreign workers that come here, but I think the best talent from other parts of the world, they've got a lot of options. So they're going to look at the countries that can offer them a good quality of life, including good housing. And good jobs. So I think, it has the potential risk to put us at a disadvantage.
For members of Canada's LGBTQ+ community, 2023 may turn out to be one of the more challenging years in recent memory. Gender identity policy put forward by the Saskatchewan and New Brunswick governments requiring parental consent for kids that wish to change their name or pronouns at school have some in this community fearing their existing rights are beginning to erode. Section 15 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms protects LGBTQ+ people from being discriminated against because of their sexual orientation. But some people feel it does not go far enough when dealing with hate crimes. So, is this country inclusive enough? Our question.
Do you believe Canada has become more or less accepting of LGBTQ rights?
As a trans non-binary person, a lot less.
Tell me why. Why do you say?
Watching the legislation that's being popped up all over the country. Like, if I walk around with makeup on, or if I have nail polish on, or if I put on a skirt or a pair of heels, every single day I will have somebody tell me to off myself or tell me to do, like, the hate that I get in the streets every single day has increased exponentially since I was a kid. Like, it was getting so much better up until I was about 34, 35, and then the administration in the US changed. All the stuff started to change, and in the last 5 years, it's gotten so much worse here in Canada. It's awful.
I would say more. I think it's more.
Yeah, why?
I don't know, I feel like there's more coverage of it, there's more conversation of it, it's open now, unlike before where it's kind of hush-hush. I think it's definitely going in a better direction.
I think that our values stand strong. I think that perhaps there's a growing group of individuals that are trying to go against the status quo. However, I have a lot of belief in Canadians, and I think that our values will continue to move against hate, and I have a lot of faith in us to be able to deal with any right-wing despotism or anything that's going to challenge LGBT rights.
Very accepting, I would say. I think overall we're a very accepting population here.
Do you think we've always been kind of that way?
That's a good question. I think just it's become more in the mainstream and main front of news, etc. So I think that's perhaps caused a little more acceptance, a little more softening of stances, and increased understanding, that sort of thing.
Over my lifetime, I would say so. My impression is that, by and large, we try to be more inclusive, and I would say that we're more welcoming and open to diversity in general.
In my lifetime, it's become more accepting. Despite what our Sask Party government is proposing that needs to happen in schools, I think overall it's become a more accepting environment. Do we need to increase education? Do we still have a long ways to go? Absolutely. But I think it has become more accepting over the course of my lifetime, at least. Having said that, there's people who promote rhetoric that doesn't necessarily align with that belief, but I think the average Canadian is more accepting of that.
Yes, I would think that Canadian society in general is more open to LGBTQ. I've seen some changes, some positive changes that way, but then at the same time you've got still some misunderstanding, thinking that it's a lifestyle choice and that people choose to be part of the LGBTQ community, which is completely false.
Christian parties in Canada, a lot of them are leaning right towards like a lot of conservatism, I believe. As I believe it just goes like a lot of it is, even my First Nation people, we're leaning towards the right a lot. And we talk about the left and we talk about socialism, we talk about progressives, but a lot of it we never talk about black or indigenous conservatism, and that's something that needs to be addressed in this country. That a lot of my indigenous people are turning to the ultra right, and a lot of conservatism in the indigenous communities and today's society, and a lot of that is affecting cause and effect. A lot of that is causing a lot of hate and a lot of discrimination towards the LGBTQ communities.
Yeah, I do think Canada's a very accepting community for LGBT communities, because it's 2023, we're much more open-minded than compared whether you want to talk about 10, 20, 50 years ago. We are living in a privileged and blessed country, and we should be appreciative of that.
I think so. I don't know if I guess it's more. I would think, but I always seemed as this country as more accepting than a lot of other countries and stuff like that. So I think it's good, but I always think that Canada was an open door type of country to accept LGBTQ community. So yeah, I do believe so.
I think Canada's always been accepting. I think, as far as I know, that community has the same rights as everyone else, in Canada. Certain people may feel like they're not treated the same, but, I think you could say the same for a lot of different groups.
I do believe so, and this trend is not only here, it's throughout the world, so that should be continued.
I think historically we have been. I think there are concerns everywhere now that maybe some of those freedoms and some of that respect is being rolled back. There is certainly a faction that would like to see those rights rolled back.
I think we are more accepting. It's concerning what's happening in Saskatchewan and proposals in New Brunswick. That's not a good thing at all, and it's all for politics, I believe. This having to inform parents about pronouns, that's just silly. There's no need to do that.
I was born in 2000, so I felt like I was always growing up in an environment that was very accepting. But again, I think that things that should be nonpartisan are becoming more partisan. So I think that people do have more of a need. Like we just saw these protests that happened, the anti-trans and the anti-LGBTQ process. So I'm not LGBTQ, but I think that people do have reason to be worried right now because there's so much hate. So yeah.
How many Canadian provinces are completely surrounded by water? 1, 2, or 3?
2.
I think 3.
1. I'll say 2.
You know the answer though. What is it?
1.
1. 2. 3.
2.
2.
2.
3.
Say 1.
The answer is 1.
Is it 1? I got it!
Of Canada's 10 provinces, only Prince Edward Island has no land borders and is completely surrounded by water. Nestled in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, it's Canada's smallest yet most densely populated province. It is nicknamed the Garden of the Gulf. On July 1st, 2023, PEI celebrated its 150th year since joining Confederation. Prince Edward Island was only accessible by boat or by plane until the Confederation Bridge was opened in 1997.
Recent events in the Middle East has much of the world on edge as tensions in Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza continue to grow. On November 1st, the federal government said in the House of Commons that Canada is not providing military assistance to the Israeli offensive in Gaza. The federal government says it is helping by providing tens of millions of dollars in humanitarian assistance to people affected on both sides of this conflict. So, do you think we're doing enough, or could we do more? Our question.
What should Canada's role be in the Middle East crisis?
I think basically the older role that Canada had in the world is just non-intervention, just training people, not actually sending troops. I don't think we should send anyone there. I just think that we should support peace, support the solution, and if the parties involved don't want that, I just think we should just back out.
I think Canada's role should help guide the parties to a path leading to peace.
I think as much as possible, Canada should play a role for peace. So not taking any sides. Not taking any sides too obviously, but trying to get the parties to work together and achieve a peace agenda.
During the beginning of the Ukrainian war, Canada was really quick to bring a bunch of Ukrainian refugees, and this has been mentioned often before, but anytime there's a war in the Middle East, we don't give that much help. We send things, but we're not very quick to bring people over and bring over refugees. So I'd like to see Canada putting in the same effort as they did with the Ukrainians.
Well, to me, humanitarian aid is really the only role we should be playing because, the conflict there has been going on for centuries, and war to me is not the answer. Violence is not the answer. Taking one side over the other is not the answer. So I would prefer if our country didn't get involved in the actual conflict itself, but to help those people that are in crisis.
I don't think we can take sides. There's no winner in a war. Seeing the innocent people on both sides suffering is terrible. I don't understand how our governments can take one side or the other when you see innocent children especially dying. I think we have to focus on how can we help. It's a war that's gone on forever and ever, but it's resurfaced unfortunately, and our role should be supporting the people that are being affected.
I think in the Middle East crisis, Canada's best role is probably to try to be a conciliatory force between all sides. I don't think that we serve ourselves or the world very well when we choose hard lines against any other group.
You know, Pearson won a Nobel Prize for being a peacekeeper way back for the Liberal Party. Not necessarily my stripe, but it doesn't matter. I think that's what Canada has to continue to do, and really probably hasn't done as good a job as that in the past. They're aligning themselves more with the United States, but I'd like to see Canada really take a strong rally into being peacekeepers, as we were in the past. We're the perfect size country for it. It would be, and that's where our heart is. I think that's where many Canadian hearts are, and that's to be peacekeepers, because boy, that's scary stuff that's happening out there, and anything we could do to save even one life. And we're talking about the lives of either the Palestinians in this case or the Israelis. I mean, they're dropping bombs at innocent people on both sides. It's just it's awful, so anything we can do as peacekeepers is the way I think we should be spending our time and efforts, and that includes the humanitarian efforts to help the people that have been bombed. It's awful.
It's a tricky question. I think Canada, it's multiculturalism, so we are pretty much from everywhere in the world, right? So in Canada, it's all time the lead of any thing related for freedom and anything related for civilian and stuff like that. So I believe Canada position try to protect the civilians and the human rights, so as usual. So that pretty much is,
Canada should always be listening and hearing what its population is saying. A lot of people live in Canada with a lot of different views and perspectives. So the government should be taking the perspective of what people are saying and relay that to other countries.
Anything to add to that now?
Just that we are always there for humanitarian purposes. So Canada's role is humanitarian, and go over and do whatever we can to support.
I think we need to look back at the role that we used to play in the 60s under Les W. Pearson. I think Canada needs to go back to its roots and become a natural arbiter of peace and play an important diplomatic role in dealing with any crises that are currently occurring.
Do I think it's our role as a country to fix that? No, I do not. Do I think we even could? No, I do not.
Yeah, I think our involvement is because the Americans are taking sides, and I don't like taking sides, and I'm the same. I'm not anti-Israeli, I'm not anti-Palestinian, I'm just, it's a tragedy. So I don't know, Canada should be more delicate in dealing with this.
Yeah, I'm unsure what our role should be, to be honest with you. I mean, we've been world peacekeepers, but that's usually after a conflict. So I think that conflict is still ongoing, and our role is hard to define right now.
To always strive for peace. So what if ever there's an action that we can take as a country to promote stability and peace in that region, I think that's necessary, but it's not an easy thing to do for sure. And I think what is part of Canada's strength is it's the fact that we have allies, and so I think we should work collaboratively with our allies to find solutions.
The federal NDP have not been mincing their words when it comes to their vision of prescription drug coverage in this country. They said they will withdraw their support for the federal government in the House of Commons if the Liberals do not commit to a comprehensive, universal, and entirely public pharmacare program. While it may be no surprise that the majority of Canadians would like to see this come into fruition, and while Canada is the only country with a universal health care program that does not include drugs, this coverage could cost Canadians more than $10 billion just in its first year. But Canada's Parliamentary Budget Officer says it could save us money in the long run. So, in these tough economic times, is this the right thing to do? Our question.
Should fiscal prudence take priority over Universal Pharmacare?
I'm a believer that ultimately publicly provided programs like Pharmacare reduce costs in the long run overall, and that really it is fiscally prudent to have something like Pharmacare.
Does it have to be one or the other? Like, can't they start providing supports to people who really need it, but not make it universal necessarily right away? There's a lot of people that can afford to pay for their own, or they have good health care and insurance. Increase it for the lower people who have less money, and maybe just kind of gradually bring it in, and maybe that makes it more affordable.
Oh wow, that's a big question. I am a strong supporter of Universal Pharmacare, so I would say that needs to come first. We've got far too many people who can't afford the medications that they need, and our government system it's no different in some ways than having, health care. It's available to everyone, and our governments have found a way to make that happen. So I think we can do the same with Pharmacare.
Well, it's a balancing act. I've been a businessman all my life. You can't do anything socially, unless you have money. And to have money, you have to be fiscally prudent. So I believe in universal health, Pharmacare. I'm pretty well off, and I'm a diabetic, and it costs me lots of money. So we don't really have universal health care, in my opinion, because I pay a lot of money just to stay alive, basically, and I can afford it. People that can't, I can see where we need to help them, and I think we do with Pharmacare to a point. But at the same time, to answer your question, it's a balancing act. It really is. We have to be fiscally prudent in order to afford things like Universal Pharmacare. So,
From my perspective, yes. I think our financial crises that we're looking at right now kind of overshadow an awful lot of the wants. So Universal Pharmacare to me would be a want that it's going to have to sit on the back burner for a little bit.
I think you have to be mindful of fiscal prudence. I think by and large, Canadians want to make sure that everyone has access to health care and pharmacare. We're a federation. Provinces have a role. I think the federal government's responsibility is to ensure that whatever program we come forward with, it's done in a concerted way that allows for the effectiveness of federalism to show. And ultimately, I think if you do that, you're in a position to perhaps deliver a program that's cost effective.
That's a significant question. Because there's a whole lot percentage of the population that have also no medical insurance. And it's the pig in the python demographics. And so you've got all these people that have hit baby boomer retirement, and by the time you hit like 60 or whatever, your health needs increase significantly. And there's going to be a lot of people who not afford basic drugs. So that's the argument for universal pharmaceutical care, and I would argue actually for dental care as well.
I don't think it's one or the other. I mean, I'm a policy individual. I'm a policy professional. We have to balance things constantly. I think it's very important that we emphasize what Canada is known for, and a big thing is universal health care. And I think within that is the subsidization of pharmaceuticals and everything related to it. I think it's very important that we balance our fiscal responsibility, but at the same time, we don't sacrifice healthcare for Canadians. I have a lot of faith in our healthcare system. And I just think it's important not to be divisive during times like this, and because it's tough times out there. Like, the economy isn't doing so great, and we can't sacrifice things as important as health.
No, because if I'm dead, my money in my bank account isn't gonna matter. Like, my health is way more important than somebody's bank account. Like, at what point are we really gonna put a price on people's health? Like, that's not a thing. Like, as someone who worked as a self-employed person who didn't have benefits for the longest time, I struggled so often. I never went to the dentist. I wasn't taking care of my mental health. I wasn't seeing a psychologist. Like, why am me as an individual do I have to be burdened with a financial portion of that if we keep saying that mental health is super important and taking care of yourself is super important and self-care is super important, but we're moving towards a system where you're going to force people to pay for it? No.
Why? Because it's just simply logic. We need to be healthy to have a society. If we don't have a society, we have nothing. So pharmacare is kind of like healthcare.
I think, unfortunately, every policy is subject to some type of fiscal constraint. I think universal pharmacare is something that Canadians have become accustomed to and should continue to get accustomed to, but it's not a bottomless well, and funds have to be found to support and finance the universal care, pharmacare.
It's a balance of convenience and cost. Obviously, it costs our country trillions of dollars because it gets so expensive that the poor can't afford to go to the hospital to get checkups. And that puts a big toll because people get sicker and sicker and sicker, and then it costs thousands of dollars for them to go to the hospital. So there's a very big balance, and if there's somewhere where we can meet in the middle.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.